These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. This episode of the Six Ranch Podcast is brought to you by Defend Security Cameras. How many pieces of carbon do you think you own?
How many pieces of carbon? Oh my God, dude. A ton.
It's a lot, right? I was thinking about this the other day, and I was looking at the arrows behind you. And like, as I look around my little world, dude, I've gotten to the point where I own a lot of sticks of carbon.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, it's more about how many pieces of carbon I break on a weekly basis.
Do you break very many arrows throughout the year?
I break a lot of arrows. Yeah.
Do you? How do you break them?
Stacking them like an idiot.
You know, I've been shooting a bow now for, oh my gosh, 35 years, 36 years.
Right.
And I've never gotten a Robin Hood.
Really?
Yeah. And I am so stingy about arrows that I just don't shoot groups. I don't do it.
You just bounce around the target, shoot the dice kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it stresses me out because at work during archery season, we'll go out and shoot with the clients after brunch or whatever. And I'm constantly talking about shot placement. So, we'll talk through it. We'll look at anatomy pictures. We'll go through the whole thing. And then they'll say, all right, where should I shoot him from this angle? And I'll shoot the target. And I used to do that and say, aim at my arrow. And then I had a guy who wasn't a particularly good shot, absolutely thread my arrow. And I was like, oh, sweet. That's awesome. I just wish he had shot that well on his bull later on. But
I'm willing to burn some, man. Like I have like 3 acres at my house. And I've got like 200 trees. And so I will put up a couple 3Ds and then I'll just put myself in shit situations. You know what I mean? Where I got to drop back, either squat down or step out or lean or, you know what I mean? But I'll just shoot at one of those 3Ds. And so it'll have like 12 arrows in it. Like I'm a complete idiot. And so really what does happen more often is you're always looking at that kill zone, but from different angles. And so I'm cross-threading stuff.
Yep.
And I know better.
Yeah.
So that's usually how I'll go through. I probably go through, at least a dozen a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least, not counting animals that I'm shooting at, because, a lot of times then that arrow is done,
Yeah.
Whitetail, not so much. I mean, I've shot 3 whitetail with the same arrow, just because I could. I mean, it was still in good shape, right? It just goes right through those things. But I don't know.
I used to shoot FMJs, and I still have a lot of love for that arrow. Like the way it performs on animals is very good. They're easy to pull out of targets. I like the weight. But I was getting all these little micro bends in my FMJs, and when I'd go to spin them, it's like, gosh, I don't remember this arrow even like really encountering a problem, but just throughout the course of their life, I think even if they're like just hitting a hard piece of the foam, sometimes they seem to get those little micro bends.
They get a little bend. They do. Yep. I spin them all the time, but I also like that they can get a micro bend. And if I'm in a pinch, I could probably still throw that arrow through the bow, I know I have, because I've shot them post bend. And so I had to stick with them. I went to a 4 mil arrow, carbon fiber with a big built up kind of, front of center weight. But at the time I was shooting a Bowtech CPXL, and I was shooting 368 feet per second, just because I'm big and I have a long draw length, and I was pulling at 80. And dude, I couldn't go shoot anywhere because those arrows would go blowing through everything, So then they're coming out the backside of like a thick foam, and I'm pulling the heads off, and I'm like, this just isn't. It's not. I mean, the energy wise, it's a crush of an arrow, but it didn't need to be that, and it was no fun to shoot targets, right? And so, for me, I just want to be able to pull stuff out easy.
You've got 20 acres and your security camera can see about 50 feet from your Wi-Fi router. Your gate, your barn, your equipment, all the places you actually need to monitor, they're exactly where your Wi-Fi doesn't reach. That's where Defend security cameras make a lot of sense. They work on cellular, just like your phone. But here's what's clever. They've got an embedded SIM card that automatically connects to the best network in your area. Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. It finds whatever's strongest. No choosing providers, no contracts, no hassle. I'm using Defend cameras at my place. You mount it, open the Defend app on your phone, and you're done. 10 minutes. Clear footage, night vision, instant alerts, and here's something you need to know. Defend doesn't sell your data. Not to China, not to tech companies, not to anyone. They work for you, period. Defend your place. It's an interesting thing. I think that one of the biggest problems to be solved in archery is actually arrow removal from targets, because with the bows that we're shooting these days, and the targets that we're shooting, it is a bear to pull these arrows out a lot of times, especially out of foam, especially out of 3D. Yeah. And
I just bought a couple of the Bulldog targets they're kind of like that Spider. I forget the brand that was in a lot of shops, but those are a lot better to pull out of.
Yep.
We'll see how long they last.
If it's miserable to pull your arrows out of the target, you're not going to shoot as much. You're just
Same with shooting the bow, man. I mean, I shoot a Hoyt RX7 now. And I went to a shop that had everything, right? It had the Hoyt and the Matthews and the PSE, and I shot like 5. And it really, for me, was like, which one of these am I willing to draw back 40 times a day and enjoy it, right? It was about draw cycle more than anything for me, really. I mean, I'm limited because I'm, my arrows, I shoot a 32-inch arrow. So I just, I'm limited on some of the bows I can pick from. So it's not like a normal guy, but for me, it was a draw cycle thing. I said, this one I'll draw a bunch,
If you are looking for sympathy from me because you have an absurdly long draw length, which is an absolute cheat code, like you're going to have to look pretty hard. I'm not going to feel bad for a tall guy under most circumstances.
It is. And the problem is a lot of times I'll shoot, like my bow currently has an extended D loop, and I cannot shoot like a thumb release because it pulls my anchor way back here. So then that string's got to come all the way across my face. So my string barely kisses my nose, Yeah. And so the mechanics of how I shoot are a little different. And when I was poor, I was shooting undersized bows all the time. So I had to really correct this I had this kind of forward lean so I shot a kisser button for a lot of years. So I had this weird, I had to fix a lot of things. I'd lean forward and get that kisser, which was sort of defeating the purpose of the kisser button because it wasn't a consistent, movement. But I was an old Matthews. I shot it really well. So I had to fix a lot of stuff once I was able to afford a bow that fit me.
Yeah. And at this stage of my life, I don't care how somebody shoots a bow as long as they're consistent. Whatever they need to do to shoot it consistently, like that's what works. So we can look at things like stance and grip and face pressure and all that. Like we can get out the microscope and say, okay, this is what works for professional shooters. This is a way for you to be able to develop consistency. But if what you're doing is the same every time, then the bow is going to act the same every time.
Mm-hmm. And all those things go out the window when you draw back on a bull. And you know what I mean? They don't, like they stay. But if somebody has to go through and have to check every time you know what I mean? I'm like, man, you just need to shoot a lot to where that all becomes natural. Like you need to get to the point where you don't think anymore, right? And so when I see guys, 'cause I have Wednesday nights we come to the house here and I have, 5 to 15 guys will show up, we lift, we do a ruck, for a mile and then we shoot. And there's times we'll mess with each other where we go, okay, I get to tell you when you shoot, so I say draw and I'm going to tell you to move or I'm going to tell you to do this and throw those guys out of those patterns. Because once you got to take a couple steps, like my bull this year, I had to walk 15 yards, down the trail and up into the woods and squat down to shoot him.
At full draw?
At full draw. Yeah.
Nice.
It was awesome. It was awesome. And it was one of those where I had a little tiny pine tree. I estimated him at 45 yards and So as I was drawn, there was a pine tree that was touching what would have been 25, but it was covering my full sight picture. And I just knew like vitals are behind that pine tree. And I have to just pray to God that this thing is going to sail over that pine tree and into the vitals, you know? And I had a pie plate, basically a pie plate's worth of space. And I can still this moment see that arrow just clearing, kind of coming in and out of sunlight too. It's weird how, you know, things slow down, but I could see it going through shade and light, and it just barely missed the top of that little pine tree and drilled him. So, yeah.
I shot a Asiatic water buffalo in northern Australia with my bow, and it was a really long, very precise stalk. Incredibly hot temperatures, sand was burning my feet, and just sweating bullets and going so slow. You know, one of these stalks where you're completely exposed. If they look at you, they can see you. But if you go slow enough and pick your timing, then you can do it. And when I got into my shooting lane, it wasn't much of a gap between these trees. But in my mind, I was like, well, all that I can see is exactly what I need to hit. So if I hit a tree, then we're good.
You either he dies or the arrow doesn't even get there, does it?
Yeah.
You're not going to wound it. Yeah.
Yep.
It's an all or nothing shot.
So anyways, this is not at all what I wanted to talk about, but here we go. You are planning a hunt this year. And this is actually, I had this idea late last night, and I texted you early this morning. I know how I plan hunts, but I don't necessarily know how other people plan hunts. And you've hunted plenty and you hunt a lot. I want you to talk me through your planning process, kind of from A to Z, and let's kind of tease apart some of the differences between what you're doing and what I would have done, and kind of have a conversation around that.
Yeah. So this one's an interesting one because it had a wrench thrown in it, because I put in for a tag in Alaska for a moose that a friend has all this intel on that was going to go with me. He said, we'll apply together. We'll go. It's near Fairbanks. And I was born in Fairbanks, Alaska. And so, I mean, I've still got some people up there I've never met, but I'm sure they would help me out if I needed it. But he was supposed to go with me. And he called me the other day and said, hey, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Right. So I hadn't planned really anything. I'm like, he's got me, right? I'm going to take a good rifle. And despite your advice on our earlier call, I'll take a good bow, you know, and then I'm just going to make sure I got, you know, some rain gear basically, you know, and be ready to go. And then when he kind of goes, I don't think I'm going to make it, that changed everything. Right. Because I have no clue where I'm going. It's not guided. It's just kind of a general tag, if you will. Right. And so where my head's at now is really gathering intel, right? And so intel both around like how am I going to get myself around, right? So am I going to be able to acquire like an Argo at best, you know, a side by side, and then a four wheeler, which I really don't want to go out there on a four wheel. I think I want six wheels if I can get them. That's what everybody's told me. Like you got to have six wheels in Alaska. So that's where my head's at right now. I think first and foremost is like, how am I going to get myself around? How am I going to get that piece of equipment to the piece of land I'm going to go on? And then from there, how do I understand the map to know that, because you've got some tribal land there and you've got some restrictions around where I can and cannot be. And then also just the theory of how far can I get away from the roads, because the locals are going to hunt and there's probably the occasional local that goes deep, but my gut says I'm going to have to go deep, you know, to get away from where all the local spots are. So I'm feeling really lost right now. So strategically kind of convinced my brother, who's highly capable in the woods, to come with me, because I don't want to be there alone. You know, I won't go alone, right? So I got to find somebody to go with me. So outside of that, then it would move to weapon system and then gear. So that's kind of where my head's at.
What about the why? Let's start with why you even want to do this.
Because to shoot a moose in Colorado, it's going to take me 30 more years to draw a damn tag. And so I decided I'm just going to shoot a cow moose every 5 to 6 years like you can here and get the meat, because I'm really ultimately after meat as a hunter. But I think for me, part of it is I was born in Alaska. It was near the town I was born in. And so there's part of me just kind of my roots, a little bit of, you know, I have stories of my dad going with my great uncle on an airboat up the river and shooting a moose, right? Took I think they took 9 shots to kill this thing or something. Just a stupid story there. But I think, man, just something about hunting. I mean, the biggest 4-legged creature that, not the biggest 4-legged creature out there, but as far as a Western kind of big game hunter type species, I mean, the moose has always had that appeal, right? It's always been an archery mule deer, archery elk, and I'd like to shoot my moose with the bow as well. And I know that me and you had a conversation, so I called you about weapons choice, and you really simplified it, but you also asked me, why the hell are you shooting with the bow?
Right? I think it's okay to ask why. I mean, why is one of the most important questions we can ask.
Right.
Yeah.
Ego. The story I can tell, the legend of me when my son looks at that someday and goes, my dad shot that with a bow. But then I could take it from there to a trad bow or a recurve, and you know what I mean? You could get crazy, and I'm not going to do that. But I feel like I'm proficient enough to do that. I think that I will be carrying a rifle because if I do find a moose and I can't get to it, I want to be able to shoot it,
Yeah. Nice.
So I think that's it, man. How am I going to get myself around, which is going to change where I'm going to be, you know what I mean, geographically? I don't want to hike in somewhere if I can help it. So then how I get there changes what kind of tent, what kind of sleeping system I'm taking, what kind of food and fuel and stove and all of those things.
Yeah, logistics are, the biggest piece of any type of hunt that you're traveling to, right?
It changes everything.
You've got to get yourself and your gear there and back again. Plus, you got to plan on that meat and cape and antlers, like whatever you're doing with all that. That's part of the plan.
Yeah.
When you're going to a place like Alaska, there are layers of redundancy that you have to add that are different from other places, right? Because there's just a lot of stuff that you might be able to count on if you were on a hunt in Colorado or Idaho or something like that.
Right.
But in Alaska, not necessarily. You almost have to count on failure of lots of your pieces of gear and just breakdowns in what's going to happen. And that's one of the cool things about hunting in Alaska is there are layers of adventure that are forced upon you by the likelihood of weather systems moving in and equipment breaking down and a lack of support or a lack of resupply. And
that's the big why. Like it's going to suck a little bit, and that's kind of the why I'm after, right?
Yeah, yeah, because it means more if it's harder.
Yep. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Cognitive dissonance. I love it.
Yeah, and in that sense of adventure, and for me, if I can have my brother along with me, there's 4 of us, but the one I hunt with a lot. I just know if we get in a mess, more than likely that's the guy I want in my back pocket. He's got zero quit in him, and he's very intuitive around how we're going to get ourselves out of here or what we're going to do in this situation. So, yeah.
I recorded a show a couple years back with a fella in Montana that got attacked by a grizzly bear and mauled really badly. And he ended up shoving his arm down the bear's throat and got the bear to let go of him and leave. And his brother was hunting in the area with him and drove him to the hospital. And, the way he tells the story of how his brother handled that, I just love. It's awesome. So, his brother calls the hospital, tells him, what he's bringing in. He calls the sheriff's department, says, "I'm going to be speeding. Don't pull me over."
Right.
He calls his brother's wife and says, "Hey, you need to bring some, 4 days worth of fresh clothes and meet us here." And just kind of goes through the list. Meanwhile, his brother's like got his face halfway gone.
His face, I think, and I've seen this. Was this the guy that was hunting with a pistol?
No, he was actually bow hunting.
Oh,
yep,
okay.
He was bow hunting out there on the eastern edge of Glacier, and it was a rough deal. It was just walking through the willows, and a bear was sleeping in it. Woke up and yeah, swatted him, hit him so hard with that first blow with its paw that that there was multiple surgeries just from that, and then
One swing.
continued
Yeah.
to bite him multiple times. So in that same vein, if you're hunting around Fairbanks, then you've got inland grizzlies that are probably going to be part of your life there. So what's your bear plan?
Very likely. Yeah, bear spray. I'll have I don't know what I would carry for a pistol. I've always carried a 45 that I am comfortable with. I shoot it a ton, and it's really familiar to me. The Glock, no safeties, pull it out and it's ready to go. I would take your advice on that. I've fished a fair bit in Alaska. I've done some floats on American Creek and some others that you're very intimate with bears, but they're distracted at that point. I mean, I've been 20 yards from a grizzly bear that's looking for salmon, and he could give a shit about me. I didn't know he was there. I came across a little island, poked my head out, and all of a sudden there's a grizzly bear standing there, or a brown bear. I don't know what we call it there it'd be a brown bear at that point, I think, right? But at that point they're really distracted.